The phone was our Rosetta Stone. While Interpol's cyber unit worked to decrypt the rest of it, I stared at that last message. My name. The admission. The implication. The curator knew who I was. Knew I was close. And, judging by the message, afraid. They always are, in the end. The buyer's liaison refused to speak. But we didn't need him to. Once the phone's contents were unlocked, the pieces fell into place. Dozens of photos. Shipments. Schedules. Banking trails leading to a network of shell corporations across Liechtenstein, the UAE, and Singapore. But there was one video that changed everything. A grainy clip, timestamped weeks before the theft. It showed Leonid Saranov, alive, and arguing. With someone off-screen. Then a voice. Filtered. Cold. You failed. We don't need you anymore. Seconds later, gunfire. Leonid didn't vanish. He was eliminated. Just another pawn in the curator's twisted gallery. But the video also gave us a gift, a partial reflection in the glass behind Leonid. A man in a tailored suit. Slim. Left-handed. Tattoo near the wrist, a string of numbers, 84. 297, 43. A coordinate? I ran it through global mapping. It pointed to a private island, 70 kilometers off the coast of Montenegro. Uninhabited. Legally owned by a C. Richter and Sons Trust. A final stage. The Interpol task force mobilized, but I went ahead alone. I needed to see it for myself. The island was desolate. Overgrown. But tucked into a cliffside was a steel door, disguised by rock and ivy. Inside, a vault. Rows of cars. Classic motorcycles. War memorabilia. Stolen art. A hoarder's dream, a criminal's cathedral. And at the end of the hall, a single frame. A photo of me. Taken from a street in Kiev months ago. On the back, scrawled in ink. Every collector has his rival. Until next time. No name. No face. Just the shadow. But he was real. I stood there, looking at Victor's recovered birdcage, the light glinting off its mirror-polished fender. We'd gotten most of the cars back. Not all. Some were lost forever. But we'd exposed the network. We'd rattled the curator's cage. And me? I didn't go back to Kiev. I stayed on the trail. Because somewhere out there, he's still collecting. Still watching. And now he knows. So am I. Detective Ivan Korolenko. Barcelona was sweltering. The port stretched like a sleeping beast, cranes groaning, ships humming, workers moving like ants under sodium lights. Somewhere in this steel labyrinth, Victor's final cars waited to disappear forever. And if Rasmus was right, the curator would be watching. Interpol set up quietly. No uniforms. No sirens. Just a silent net of plainclothes agents, drones, and discreet surveillance vans. I stood on the dock, breathing diesel and salt, heart pounding. Port 9. A cargo ship named Aurelia Star was set to depart at 4 o'clock. Registered under a Panamanian flag. Crew, all contracted. Manifest, agricultural machinery. We knew better. The cars would be in container 42B. We'd triple verified it. Scans confirmed abnormal density and metallic structure. And there was one more thing. A heat signature. Someone was inside. The plan was simple. Wait until loading finished. Surround the ship. Isolate the container. Extract quietly. But nothing ever goes to plan. At 3:17, we lost drone feed. Jammed. At 3:19, 2 port workers went missing. Uniforms found in a dumpster. At 3:21, the container started moving, early. Off schedule. Someone knew we were coming. I grabbed a radio. All units move. Take the container. Now. We converged on the dock. As we approached, the crane operator began lowering 42B onto a truck already waiting, with falsified port credentials. The moment our lights flashed, the truck bolted. Chase initiated. I was behind the wheel of a black Interpol SUV, engine screaming as we tore through shipping lanes. Crates and forklifts blurred past. The truck bounced wildly, but it was fast. Too fast for a rig that size. Custom-tuned. Of course. Then, as we closed in on the turn toward the main gate, the back doors of the truck burst open. And something tumbled out. A decoy car shell. Empty. Gutted. Just a distraction. They wanted us chasing shadows. But I'd seen the real container earlier, while reviewing thermal scans. They'd swapped IDs. The real one was still in the yard, hidden inside a stacked triple-load crate, rigged to be lifted last. I called it in. Container 47B, middle stack, base 6. Go! Now! Agents swarmed. Seconds later, we had it surrounded. We pried open the doors. There they were. 3 of Victor's most prized cars. The Lamborghini. The Miura. And the Maserati birdcage. All intact. And in the corner, bound and gagged, sat a man in a navy suit. He wasn't a crewman. He was the buyer's liaison. And in his pocket, we found a phone. Encrypted. But with one unsent message saved in drafts. Shipment intercepted. Korolenko was there. He knows. Signed only with a single character. C. We had Rasmus in custody, bound and bloodied in a Moroccan holding cell with one flickering bulb and no clock on the wall. Time meant nothing in there, only pressure. I'd seen men tougher than him crack under less. He didn't speak for hours. Just sat, breathing through his teeth, blood caked at the corner of his lip. Then he asked for water. I handed him the bottle. He drank, wiped his mouth, then leaned in. You think Leonid's behind this? He said. But you're wrong. I stiffened. You're saying he isn't? Oh, he started it, Rasmus said, almost smiling. He paid for the plan. He built the network. But he didn't finish it. Then who did? Rasmus paused. His buyer. That one word changed everything. This wasn't about vengeance. Not even about Victor. Leonid was just a broker, a middleman. The real power was someone else. Someone wealthy enough to buy entire collections, erase trails, and silence the men who helped build them. I pressed for more. You give me a name, and I'll make sure your sentence goes down. Rasmus looked up at me with eyes that had seen more prisons than passports. You won't find him, he whispered. No one does. They call him the Curator. I froze. I'd heard the name once before, barely a whisper, in an Interpol dossier years ago. A ghost figure who collected stolen art, artifacts, even military antiques. Paid in offshore crypto. Never met anyone in person. Never left a trace. Now he was collecting cars. What does he want with Victor's collection? I asked. Rasmus chuckled, dry and bitter. He wants the perfect garage. Every car with a story. Every theft like a performance. He thinks he's building the Louvre of machines. My stomach turned. You tell me where he is, I said. Where the next drop is. Or I let the Moroccans take you apart. Rasmus blinked slowly. Then, with the calm of a man who knew he had one last card, he said, Barcelona. Cargo ship. Port 9. Leaves in 4 days. That was enough. I called Interpol. The net was tightening. And far out at sea, someone called the Curator was about to learn. Some collections are too dangerous to keep. Leonid Serenov had vanished like vapor. No customs records. No bank activity. No phone pings. A man that rich doesn't disappear, unless he's planned it for years. But every ghost leaves behind a draft. Interpol flagged a private jet departing Moldova the night before the intercept. Destination, Casablanca. Passenger manifest listed a Louis Saran, a name just one consonant away from the truth. It fit Leonid's style, high society meets cold-blooded chess player. I booked the next flight to Morocco under a false identity, and landed just after midnight. Casablanca buzzed with heat and secrets. Everyone moved fast, but looked over their shoulder. My contact there, Amine, a Moroccan detective with a soft voice and sharper eyes, met me in the shadows of an old cafe in the Medina. "He's here," Amine said, handing me a tablet. "Checked in under a Russian passport at a riad near the ocean. But he doesn't stay in one place. He moves every 36 hours. I studied the photo, Leonid, sunglasses, linen shirt, stepping out of a black Mercedes Maybach. "His security?" I asked. "Private," Amine replied. "Ex-Spetsnaz. Not amateurs." I exhaled. We couldn't touch him here. Not without an international arrest warrant, and he had lawyers too slippery for that. But then Amine dropped a bombshell. "There's a warehouse outside Rabat," he said. "Not on the books. Not registered. But we've seen trucks going in, covered, sealed, heavy with weight." I already knew. Another drop point. Victor's cars weren't just being stolen. They were being distributed like contraband. Like organs. I drove out that night, across the long desert road, headlights cutting through swirling dust. When we reached the warehouse, Amine killed the engine. "We go in quiet," I whispered. No sirens. No lights. We slipped through a broken gate in silence. Inside, the smell hit me first: oil, rubber, salt. And there they were. 5 cars. Not chopped. Not crushed. Preserved. Wrapped in black plastic, tucked into crates, waiting for buyers. A Lamborghini Miura. A Jaguar E-Type. Even the Corvette Stingray I remembered from Victor's garage. They were alive. And then, a footstep behind me. Then another. Voices. We had seconds. Amine drew his pistol. I pulled mine. Out from the shadows came 3 men, armed, armored, and surprised to see us. The firefight was brief but brutal. 2 dropped. 1 ran. We chased him into the night, across the dunes, through thorns and dust. And when I finally tackled him into the sand, I ripped off his mask and stared into his eyes. It was Rasmus. Leonid's fixer. Bloodied, gasping, defeated. "You think you've won?" he spat. I pressed the barrel of my pistol to his collarbone. "No," I said. "I'm just getting started." That chrome handle haunted me all night. I'd seen thousands of parts over my career, hundreds of cars dismantled, rebuilt, and disguised, but the handle from a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO? That shape, that patina? It was unmistakable. And Leonid Saranov just happened to have one, tucked behind museum glass, pretending to be a shadow? The man was playing games. I called in a favor from an old friend at the National Art Crimes Bureau. He ran a quiet scan on Leonid's gallery's shipments. Most were real, artifacts, sculpture, Japanese woodblock prints. But one item had moved recently, quietly, under diplomatic seal. A crate from Odessa. Declared as ceramic restoration equipment. Bull. That wasn't pottery in that crate. That was metal. Precision-engineered Italian metal. And it was delivered just 2 days after Victor's garage was emptied. I went to see Victor again. He looked like a ghost. He hadn't eaten in days. "I think Leonid has your car," I told him. His eyes flared. "Not just any car. The Ferrari? The GTO?" I nodded. "I knew he was bitter," Victor muttered. "But I never thought." He trailed off. Rage was rising in his voice. A fire I hadn't seen since the night of the theft. "Then we take it back," he said. I held up a hand. "We can't. Not yet. We need proof, not just parts. I need to catch him with something he can't explain away." So I devised a plan. We staged a leak. I had an anonymous source feed a rumor through a shady collectors forum, word of a private showing in Dubai. A secret auction. The bait? A complete 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, restored, provenance uncertain. Leonid couldn't resist. Within 48 hours, his people had contacted the seller. But there was no seller. It was all fake. A trap. We tracked his communications through an encrypted proxy. It took days to decrypt, but when we did, we struck gold. Leonid's fixer, an Estonian named Rasmus, had scheduled a private transport from Kharkiv to Tbilisi. There they'd meet a Turkish buyer. The car, or at least the shell of it, was to be disguised under a false chassis number and reassembled in Istanbul. They weren't just stealing cars. They were laundering them. I coordinated with customs, Georgian border agents, and a pair of Interpol officers. We set up the intercept on a rainy Thursday evening outside Batumi. When the truck was stopped and opened, there it was. The body of Victor's Ferrari. No plates. No emblems. But unmistakable in shape and soul. We had our evidence. But Leonid? He was already gone. Vanished. Not in Kharkiv. Not in Ukraine. Not even in Europe. A ghost. And the chase had only just begun. I stared at the seat. The burn was deliberate, not total destruction, just enough to send a message. Whoever did this wanted Victor to feel it. This wasn't just theft. It was personal. I photographed the scene, bagged the note, and traced the floor for any hint of tire treads or recent movement. Nothing. The entire place had been sanitized. Except one thing. In the corner of the warehouse, behind a rusted generator, I found a discarded cigarette but still faintly warm. Someone had been here minutes before me. I scanned the perimeter again. No exit holes. No fresh tracks in the gravel. Which meant one thing, they were still watching. Maybe watching me. I drove back to Kiev with one thing spinning in my mind, the note. The handwriting was deliberate, calligraphic, almost ceremonial. I had it analyzed. The ink was French. J. Herban brand. Used mostly by collectors and antiquarians. And the paper? Watermarked, handmade, from a workshop in Venice. Only someone wealthy would bother with such drama. So I started turning over Victor's inner circle. He had no siblings, one ex-wife, in Florence, and a few old racing friends, many jealous, some bankrupt. But one name stood out. Leonid Saranov. A former partner in Victor's energy business, cut out after a bitter falling out. Accused of laundering funds through offshore casinos. An art collector with a flair for exotic tastes. And rumor had it, he ran with certain circles. Black market circles. I dug deeper. 3 years ago, Leonid had tried to buy Victor's prized Maserati for double its value. Victor refused. Said it wasn't for sale at any price. Leonid didn't take rejection well. I paid him a visit. His estate was a fortress outside Kharkiv, glass walls, private guards, a koi pond the size of a tennis court. He greeted me in slippers and a robe, smiling like a cat that had just eaten the canary. "Ivan," he said, "I was wondering when you'd come knocking." "I have questions," I said. "About a fire. A Ferrari seat. And a message." His smile didn't fade. "You know, in Japanese art, they repair broken pottery with gold. It's called kintsugi. They believe damage makes something more beautiful." I leaned in. "Is that what this is to you? Art?" He didn't blink. "To some, a car is just a machine. To others, it's power. Memory. Obsession." That last word echoed in my head. Obsession. As I left his estate, I noticed something behind the glass wall of his private gallery. A painting. It was small. Italian. 17th century. But reflected faintly in the glass, I caught the edge of something metallic. Chrome. A door handle. Not just any handle. One from a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. 3 days passed. No ransom note. No digital breadcrumbs. Nothing on the black market. No word from Interpol, no alerts from customs. Whoever stole those cars, they didn't just want them, they wanted them invisible. Then came the call. A whisper, from an old contact in Odessa, a port inspector named Makar. He owed me a favor from years back, when I'd covered up his brother's offshore gambling arrest. He spoke in code. You still tracking shadows, Ivan? Only the ones that move silently. Well, one of yours just blinked. He didn't say much, only this: a private cargo container, marked for Istanbul, had passed through a secondary checkpoint without inspection, unusual, even by Odessa's flexible standards. It was listed as vintage machinery, declared by a shell company registered in the Caymans. No customs flag. No delay. Moved overnight. I requested satellite imaging, pulling strings through an old NATO contact. What I got was grainy but unmistakable: a flatbed truck, the same model from Victor's security glitch, backing into a shipping crate under the cover of night. Tarped. Guarded. It was leaving the country. But not by land. By sea. The Istanbul route made sense. From there, a car could vanish into the global underworld: Dubai, Jakarta, Sao Paulo. Once it's chopped, rebranded, repainted, it might never be recognized again. A $20 million collection dissolved like sugar in tea. But here's the catch. The truck didn't leave directly. It detoured, stopping at a warehouse outside Mykolaiv. Hidden. Unregistered. Cold as a tomb on satellite. I made a decision. I was going down there myself. I didn't trust the local authorities. Too many hands already greased. Too many favors traded in silence. So I packed my old CZ pistol, slipped on my bulletproof vest, and drove south. By the time I reached the warehouse, it was dusk. Crickets chirped like alarm bells, and the air smelled of rust and oil. I crept along the outer fence. No alarms. No guards. Just silence. Too much silence. When I finally pried open the side door and stepped inside, my heart sank. The warehouse was empty. Except for one thing. In the center of the floor, illuminated by a single hanging bulb, sat the torn leather seat of a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. Burned. Deliberately. With a note pinned to it. Some collections are meant to be broken. By the time the forensics team arrived, I was already pulling footage from Victor's private servers. Redundant backups, clever, but not clever enough to outsmart who we were dealing with. The main feed had been severed just before 2:03 a.m. Not cut. Looping. Someone had hacked the security system and replaced the live feed with pre-recorded stills from earlier that night. An old spy trick. The fake footage ran seamlessly, until you noticed the same moth hitting the same light bulb. Over and over. Someone knew this system inside and out. And they gave themselves enough time to work. Still, I got lucky. One camera, mounted outside the estate wall facing a tree line, hadn't been fully patched. It glitched at exactly 2:07 a.m. for one frame. Just long enough to catch the edge of a flatbed truck covered with a green tarp, barely visible behind the trees. It was no ordinary flatbed. I'd seen that model before: military-grade suspension, reinforced steel ramp. Used to transport tanks. This wasn't just theft. This was coordinated logistics. Any enemies? I asked Victor, who sat silent in a leather chair, hands trembling over a cup of untouched tea. He shook his head. None with this kind of reach. I don't even let collectors know what I have. Most of these cars were stored under alternate titles. Even the registry is confidential. That made it worse. Whoever did this wasn't guessing. They had inside knowledge. And someone had gone to extreme lengths to erase their fingerprints. Literally. No prints. No hair. Not even a partial shoe tread. But when I scanned the floor near the service entrance, I found a strange residue. It shimmered under UV, a fine gray powder with hints of metallic flake. Titanium dust. Used in brake pads, racing brake pads. Why would a thief be covered in racing residue? Unless they were drivers, too. Street racers? No, too sloppy. Smugglers? Maybe. Or something darker. I left the garage that day with more questions than answers, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just a car heist. It was an operation. And it had only just begun. That night, something lingered in the air, an instinct I'd learned not to ignore. The image of the white van circling Victor's estate replayed in my mind like a warning I hadn't fully understood. No plates, no markings, no sound. Just quiet calculation. A predator circling its prey. I knew Victor personally. His collection wasn't just metal and horsepower, it was memory, legacy. He spent decades curating 15 of the rarest cars in Eastern Europe, a Ferrari 250 GTO, a Lamborghini Miura, a Corvette Stingray split window, even a 1937 Bugatti Type 57. All stored in a private, climate-controlled garage on the edge of Kiev. The next morning, my phone rang before sunrise. Victor's voice shook. I'd never heard it do that before. Ivan, they're gone. Gone. That one word made my heart stop. I was in my car within seconds, speeding down the mist-covered highway, sirens silent, the city still asleep. When I reached his estate, the wrought iron gates were ajar. The garage door stood wide open. An armed guard lay unconscious beside the booth, alive barely, with a puncture mark in his neck. Some kind of injection, fast-acting. Professional. Inside the garage, nothing. Empty, stripped clean. The Maserati birdcage. The Ferrari. Even the Bugatti. Gone without a trace. No broken glass, no tire marks, just severed security cables, a destroyed motion sensor array, and silence. And one detail. A piece of translucent wrap, automotive shipping film, lay on the polished floor. It still smelled of fresh plastic. The kind used to protect cars during international transport. I crouched down, fingers brushing the plastic. Cold. New. They'd moved fast. I looked up at Victor. The man who'd stared down oligarchs and tax agents without blinking was trembling. They took my whole life, Ivan, he said, voice barely a whisper. Every piece of it. He wasn't wrong. I stood up slowly, scanning the space. This wasn't a smash and grab. This was a surgical extraction. And someone very skilled, was behind it. I'm Detective Ivan Korolenko. I should say was, because that night changed everything. It began innocently. A wealthy entrepreneur named Viktor Ivanenko, a car collector renowned in Kiev circles, invited me to gaze upon his rare Maserati Tipo 61 birdcage, a gleaming 1960s gem stored in a climate-controlled private garage. He hosted little showings for trusted friends only. The cars weren't insured for street theft, too high a premium. They were hidden, discreet, and prized. Meanwhile, across continents, authorities in New York uncovered an underground operation, a so-called dealership, in a Bronx parking garage housing 72 luxury cars, including a $475,000 Rolls-Royce, stolen from New Jersey homes via key fob thefts and shipped abroad in containers. Operation High Rollers. The Sun. And in North London, thieves used cleverly disguised signal amplifiers that looked like Game Boys to steal high-end cars by accessing Bluetooth or keyless entry systems, over US $2. 7 million in losses across 170 victims. Justice. Gov. +1. I filed away those stories mentally, little knowing that a similar threat lurked here. Victor's collection included Ferraris, Lamborghinis, vintage Corvettes, untouchable classics worth millions. I assured him I'd keep an eye out, though I'd never seen anything quite so bold locally. Then came a tip. Someone spotted a suspicious white van circling Victor's gated estate late one night, license plates blurred. I thought maybe a joyride or vandalism. I should have known it was far worse. That's where the calm ended, and the story began.